Okay, we're back. I've put those 6 screws in, 3 each side. Also these ones here at the back, that if you can see, they go into the tail block. When you put them in, do not put them in tight. However, all the other screws, as you put them in, make sure you tighten them. If you tighten them all now, it means that you can't forget to tighten them and they won't fall apart in flight. However, you need to leave these ones here a little bit loose now to aid you in getting that tail boom in later on. Okay, next step is you grab your main gear and your auto rotation gear. If we just separate these, this is what they look like. These ones are a little bit old and dirty, however they still fly perfectly fine, so I haven't upgraded them yet. I have broken a lot. You do break and damage the threads on the main gear, which is the top gear. It's also the bigger one. This is the one that the motor drives. However, your main shaft attaches through the bottom, through this bolt which you can see in there, which I put in there to hold for safety while it's not being used. In this top main gear there is an auto bearing. Now if we slide those two together like that, you see it spins. The top gear will spin anti-clockwise on the auto rotation gear, however clockwise it won't spin, and the one-way bearing wants to spin the bottom blue gear in this case, because that's the blue gear is a 450 SE part and the top gear is a 450 part. There is absolutely no difference between the two apart from one's blue and one's white. They're also exactly the same price. Alright, the other thing you will need is this little ring. Whoops, I just dropped it. Is this little ring here. It's about 8mm round with about 6mm hole through the middle of it, and it's about 1.5mm, maybe 2mm thick. This goes on top of the top of your main gear, on top of that little sleeve that you saw coming through the auto rotation gear before. It just slips on, just like that. To be honest, I don't really know what it's for. I'm assuming it's so that when it goes up and the main gear hits on top of this, on the bottom of this little bearing here, the one that I'm pointing to with the Allen driver, I'm assuming so that there is no contact. I think it's some sort of bush. However, I don't know the name of it. The name of it's not given in the T-Rex manuals. However, I know it needs to go in there and it is critical. So make sure you don't lose that and you put it in. Alright, next thing you need to do, once you've got your motor in and everything's all good, you grab your main gear and you slide it in from one side into the middle. Now if you look at that, it's all in. However, there is a bit of slop like that there. That's fine at the moment. That's because we haven't set the mesh properly on the motor yet. So you can see that the motor still has some travel to go in it. You can see a bit of a slot in the screw that we can still adjust, so that'll be fine. So I'll take this out again, just so I can grab my Allen driver and come around and undo this screw out of there. And pull it out. Get out. There we go. Just like that. So now we slide that into there, just like that. Now, just leave it sit there, and you grab your rotor hub. I've already got the linkages pre-attached because I just left them on the swash plate as I pulled them out. I'll give you a little bit of a run through. I'll just move that frame out of the way temporarily. Give you a little bit of a run through about everything that you're on your swash plate, on your rotor head, and what it's called. These are your linkage rods. They obviously go down to your servos, your 3 servos, which will plug into elevator, which I set up on the rear. aux1, which I set up for the front left hand servo, which on this helicopter I've got it as the top servo, and aileron, which I set up as the bottom servo on the right hand side on this helicopter. My 250 T-Rex is around the other way, Just it doesn't really matter. It's all set up in swash mixing and reversing later on anyway. It's not a big issue. Alright, this part here, this round bit there, that's your swash plate. Okay, and your swash plate is also this aluminium bit in here in the middle. Okay, that's your swash plate. That is the heart of your helicopter. If you have a substandard swash plate, you will have a substandard helicopter. There is no way around it. That is the absolute heart of your helicopter. Alright, from your swash plate, you have these. These are your washout arms. Okay, they're your washout arms. They go down through this little link that hooks onto one of the balls on the inner race of the swash plate. Hooks onto one of the ball links through this plastic link, and it goes down. This is your washout arm. Alright, that's actually all of these parts on this swash plate, on this rotor hub, are all aligned parts. Doesn't matter, the HK parts all look exactly the same, however they're a slightly different blue. These are a lot more electric blue, and the HK parts, like this tail box, is a darker blue. If I hold the two side by side, you can see the differences in colour. Yeah, the line's more of an electric blue, and the HK parts are a darker blue. Alright, after your washout arms, you go then up to another linkage to what is called your flybar cage, which, if we move that top of the rotor hub out of the way, is this part here. Okay, it's got two flybar cage ends and two flybar cage sides. These sides have a little ball link in the middle there. Okay, and onto that little plastic linkage goes on there and down to the one side of your washout arm. That washout arm picks up the movement sideways on the swash plate and pivots that flybar cage just like that. Okay, nothing actually really pivots that flybar that way. If I hold that swash plate still, it pivots like that. All that makes the flybar cage pivot like that in flight is this sideways movement like that onto the flybar cage. And now if you look at the blades, it spins clockwise as you look at it from the top. This one here has negative pitch, so as it's spinning this way, it's going to push down on that flybar paddle, and the other side's got positive pitch and it's going to pull up. And so that goes around, and then by the time we get to here, we've got zero pitch, and then the pitches are changing, and down it goes again. So nothing actually pulls the flybar. Nothing actually makes it tilt. It's all on the aerodynamics of it flying through the air as it just twists sideways, just like that. All that movement there is all done by the aerodynamics hitting the flybar paddles. This here is called your flybar. Okay, on this helicopter I don't use flybar weights. I prefer a faster cyclic response. I also run a fairly scorchingly high head speed too. My other helicopter, I use a 4050 kV motor with a 50 amp speed controller. As I said, I like a lot of power. So when you get your rotor hub, you don't have this flybar cage pre-installed. The linkages will be on, and your seesaw, which is this little bit here in the middle that you can see. Try and get a better view of it for you. Which is this bit here. Okay, this bit that I'm tracing out. It goes around the helicopter, it goes around the rotor hub. Okay, that comes down and there's little bearings in this piece, just in under there. So your flybar cage will be pre-installed onto your head. So you have to just get it into place and grab your flybar and thread it through. This hole here in the flybar cage, it'll go through a brass washer, brass bush, and then you put it through the two bearings, which will be in this end of the seesaw and on the other side of the seesaw, and then you push it out through the other side of the flybar end and you bring it out. You give it a little bit of a nip once you think you've got it in the right spot, and then you get your measuring tools. and you measure from the inside of this point here out to the tip of your fly bar, which will measure out to about there, and you do the same on the other side. Okay, and then whatever difference it is, you make the longer end push it a little bit to the shorter end. So if you've got, say, 90mm there and you've got 70mm there, you push the 90mm side through that way, 10mm approximately, and then you just tension that screw a little bit again, and then you go through and you measure it again, and you keep repeating this process until you've got it down to a tolerance that you like. I generally go to 0.1. I gotten a little bit lazy lately. Now I only go to about 0.5, and I get my Dremel, which it's actually an air powered die grinder, but same tool, just instead of being powered by electricity I use air, and you just sand off the ends of your fly bar until it's the same length. It's very critical for balancing on the fly bar. It's very critical. Then the next step you do, once you've done that and you've got this in and you've got it all tightened up with Loctite and all these components, is you get your little fly bar weights. They're round, they look somewhat similar to the spacers we used before on the frame kit. I don't have any available, as well I don't use them. However, for beginners I would recommend really using fly bar weights. It does the controls down a little bit and makes it a little bit less responsive, which is good for a beginner. Next thing you do, you slide them on and you put them up here, and they'll have a little grub screw in them, and you just tension them a little bit into the middle, just so that they're sitting there and they don't fall off. Then you grab your fly bar paddles and you twist your fly bar paddles on, and you want them to go in about 10mm or so. You'll also notice on the end of your fly bar you've got a threaded section on it, and you twist it on until this point here on the fly bar paddle is just about one thread away from finishing off, covering up all of the thread. And you do the same on the other side, and then you go through the same procedure again to center the fly bar however you want to center your fly bar paddles. So you measure from this point here out to this point here, and then you check the other side, and you keep repeating the process until it's all good. And then once you've got it accurate, you want to look down the fly bar paddle like that. This is really a bit difficult for me to shoot through the camera, so I'll grab the camera and I'll try and get a better view. You want to look down your fly bar paddle like such, and you want to make sure that the fly bar paddle is in perfect alignment with that fly bar cage, and that you can see there, and make sure that it's dead in alignment. If it's not, you do come into troubles. The helicopter is a lot less responsive and it becomes wallowy under flight conditions and cyclic movement. Okay, so you do that. Then the next step would be to move your fly bar weights out, and you push them all the way up until the outside of the fly bar and tension them there, and that's your rotor hub done. I would also recommend going through and tensioning all of your bolts and screws in your rotor hub. Check them all. If you've bought a HK kit or even an align kit, I would recommend pulling the whole rotor head apart, pulling every single screw out of it one by one to make it nice and easy for you, and put Loctite on it and reinstall it. This is the heart of your helicopter. If anything goes wrong with this, you've got trouble. A lot of trouble. So spend your time on your rotor hub, get it right, put lots of Loctite on it. Don't be scared, the stuff's cheap, your helicopter's not. Okay, so we grab a mainframe. I'll just grab one of these tomatoes. Fresh out of my garden. Now, I'll put that rotor hub down, and we slide this main gear in, like such. If you look down through the top of your bearing hole, like that, you can see straight through it. That means that I've got the main gear perfectly in line with where the shaft axis is. So, next thing I do, I grab this rotor hub. Grab the rotor hub and I spin this main gear. I'll spin it that way, it's a little bit easier. It never works on film, I tell you. Alright, so now you hold your main gear in place, and what I've done, see that hole there through the bottom of that auto rotation gear? You can sort of see through it now in the blue one. That's where the bolt goes through to attach into the hole in the bottom of your main shaft, which you can see there. Now what you want to do, you want to sort of get the same angle for the hole in the main shaft as the hole in the auto rotation gear to make it easy to put the bolt through later on and line it up. So we slide it down. You might have to jiggle stuff, and it just slides down nicely into place. Now if we look at the bottom of the main gear there, one thing I should note, on the bottom of your main shaft, see this collar here? You need to put that in. That attaches with a little grub screw off to the right hand side that you can see there, that little black thing. You need to put that on. There will be a groove in the main shaft. You can put the little bush a little bit higher if you want. I know that this one's in exactly the right place because it was like that when I pulled it out. Put it a little bit higher rather than a little bit lower, because if you put it lower you won't be able to push your main shaft down all the way. So you slide the main shaft down, and we got it first time. See how you can see nicely through that auto rotation gear with the main shaft in it? That means that it's lined up beautifully. So I'll grab this little high tensile bolt. It's for your main shaft. It's also the same bolt which goes in through the top of your rotor hub for your main shaft. So I just put that down. I put it on my driver. And I've put a little bit of Loctite on it. And you can see a little bit of Loctite there. Okay. So I'll just go out of range a bit, just so I can see what I'm doing. The camera's sort of a little bit in my way. There we go. So that's through. It's through one side of the auto rotation gear. Just spin that a little bit. And it's through the main shaft, and it's going to come through the other side of the auto rotation gear. And there's a little nut there, right where my left thumb is. And we're just going to screw that in with the Loctite on it. Loctite's your friend, remember. And you're just going to screw it in. And just keep going until it takes up all of the slack, which we're almost there. And then the same 2-finger thing, and just tension it just so that. Pull your driver out and away you go. Next step you need to do is this little collar up here on the top. Once you've got this in, just release the tension on that, take that grub screw out, and because I've taken the screw out, a little bit of Loctite on it. Put it back into the hole there. Don't put any tension on it. Now, the step that you need to do. With 2 fingers, I use my ring finger and pinky finger on my left hand and my thumb on my left hand, and I squeeze that collar together and the main and auto gear together, while at the same time I get my driver, I put it into that grub screw and you tension it. Now what that does, that main gear there, it's currently pushed up nice and hard against that bearing in the bottom main shaft bearing mount, and that collar there is also pressing down on that top bearing in the top bearing mount. And so now if I pull on that head, try and push it up and down, we've got no movement, no play. Nice and beautiful. That's what we want to see. Also, while we're here, you'll grab this motor mount. Your motor mount consists of are metal, and on some of the cheaper 450 HK kits that mount is actually plastic, but on the more expensive ones it comes out as an aluminium one as well. This is an aluminium battery mount too of another HK helicopter. The carbon fibre ones do have a tendency to break under hard 3D accidents where the batteries get thrown. With the metal ones, however, the screws can't pull through the aluminium quite so easily, and the battery just goes for a fly, not the whole battery mount. On the top of your battery mount, you can actually see there remnants of the old carbon fibre one, which I've just attached with a bit of double-sided and a bit of epoxy too, it seems, to the old one. And it's got some male velcro, that's the hard abrasive one, and you stick that on there. Now this goes here onto the front. Now we grab these 4 tiny little screws. They're rather small screws, they're about 4mm long, 5mm long, rather small still. It still uses the normal 1.5mm driver. This is why a good driver in 1.5mm is really beneficial for a 450 size helicopter. I'm just shaking a little bit there, and you get the screw to go in and put it into place. So I'll go through, I'll put these 4 screws in and I'll be back.